Helen says, is it okay to wallow in sadness or anger? Sometimes I think that positive thinking while not feeling positive is bottling up my emotions.
Man, I don't think it's ever good to wallow in the negative feelings. It's, again, like the negative feelings are a symptom. The anger is a symptom. The depression is a symptom. I think those need to be recognized. But like to sit there and just wallow in self-pity is, I don't think that's useful. Personally,
no, and I think it can turn into a downward spiral. I mean, like I said, and thankfully this is on Patreon. This is not stuff I would talk about in public generally, but this past week's first time in my life I've had suicidal thoughts. And I tend not to be a emotive person. Like the last time I cried legitimately, like broke down and cried, was when my mom died, a decade ago. And it's not that I think crying is wrong. I think it's very beneficial. It's not a natural response for me.
Right.
But I could not stop crying this week. Like I had to lock myself in the bathroom. And I was just like sitting on the floor, just uncontrollably. And wallowing in that though could only lead to one place, right? Like it's the first time over the last 9 months there have been times where I'm like, man, I wish I wouldn't have woken up today. That's not suicidal, but there have been moments where it's just been like, I need to end this all. Like this is too much suffering. And I need this to be over. But if I wallow in it, it's probably going to lead to that. And so it's finding a way out, but also not, I don't want to sugarcoat and say everything's great. Right. But I do want to acknowledge how I got there, but I need to find a way out of it. And wallowing is not the answer.
Yeah. No. I agree. I would say it is okay for you to process those feelings and to take as much time as you need to process them. It is okay for you to be honest with yourself and others about how you feel. It is okay for you to take longer than what the people in your life think you need to process them. It's okay for you to seek any help from anybody that you find helpful. It's okay to be curious about those feelings. It's okay to inquire into them. It's okay to use them as a tool for self-discovery. It's okay to talk to a therapist if that's something that you're open to and you feel is helpful. It's okay to simply feel those feelings and not force them out of your system overnight. That is absolutely okay. I think the reason that we take issue with the word wallow is not because we're trying to be the semantic cops and arrest you for using that word. It's because that sort of implies that I'm going to accept this as my final state, and I'm not going to be open to the possibility that this feeling is going to move me in a direction that leads me beyond it. Don't accept any feeling as the final state. Even the good ones that you have,
right?
Because all of those feelings will subside, and in many ways they are like the seasons; they come and go in different cycles. But as long as you are in that feeling, give yourself the permission to accept that as okay for you to feel, and process that in whatever way works for you.
Yeah, it's sometimes too, like when I get really down for whatever reason, sometimes I will take a moment to like really honestly appreciate the fact that I even have the ability to feel, because I'd rather feel pain than nothing at all. I mean, personally, I'm sure it's different for a lot of people, but I know that like sometimes like going through those emotions, like, yeah, we can learn from it. And you don't want to stuff stuff down, because like you try to like ignore those emotions. It just comes back stronger in different ways, especially like you try to drink it away or do some drugs to push it away. Like it's just going to come back even stronger. But yeah, like I was having this conversation with Mariah this morning. She was having a rough time, and I'm like, I was like, our podcast today is about positive thinking, and like I don't think that fixes everything, but being able to like appreciate the fact that you have this human experience, also understanding that the human experience, it's like it's heaven and it's hell. Like it's like I think that if hell exists, like this actually might be it, man. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. Let's unpack that a little bit, because we have someone like Rob Bell who's been on our podcast, and we had quite a few Christians. I don't know, TK, you're son of a pastor, right?
Son of a preacher, man.
Okay, yeah. So, but my first thought goes to so Ryan and I grew up religious, right? Ryan, Jehovah's Witness. I grew up Catholic, and very religious parents. But there are times where I kind of think of prayer as almost like positive thinking in a way, but it can lead to like it can have the same sort of delusional positive thinking. We're asking the universe to give me this thing.
So what you're saying is relying on prayer alone is kind of like relying on positive thinking alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like relying on The Secret or whatever, right?
Well, it's funny because prayer, though, if like going back to the whoop, like that's what's your wish? Like that's the first step. I get that.
Tweet that podcast,
right?
Sean.
We'll link to the song.
Who's that? 95 South?
Oh my God.
I'm gonna pretend not to know.
But like that's the first step in whoop. It's like, what is your wish? What do you want? I mean, and it's, I do think that step is important. Like you do got to have Hail Mary, like, I mean, it's okay to throw a Hail Mary out there. Like it's not, but if you're just relying on the Hail Mary, like that's
prayer is. Like,
well, Hail Mary is literally a prayer.
Right. That is true.
But that's why the play is called a Hail Mary.
I know. And my mom kept rosary beads on her at all times and said the rosary every single, like, she had calluses on these two fingers because she would go through the rosary beads, right? Mm-hmm. And in doing that, like, she would do the Hail Marys, and that to me is more of that's like transcendental meditation, right? Like when you're going through that same prayer over. There was 60 beads on a rosary bead, I think. She just keep going through it over and over. That's similar to having a mantra, and whatever your mantra is. Big blue book or something, you're like saying it over and over and over. Like it seems really similar. But our friend Adam Dressler, who just wrote a book, I think it's called "This Is How We Pray." Yeah, and it's he's a pastor at a really big church in Tennessee, and I'm reading that, and his is much different from that. Like my mom's was a meditative sort of experience. But what about prayer for you, TK? I've never heard you talk about religion, but I know you have your set of beliefs. What are you comfortable talking about with our small Patreon audience here?
Always comfortable talking about anything that comes up. So there's a very excellent book by Brother Lawrence called The Practice of the Presence of God. And in that book, he delivers an understanding of prayer as the art of cultivating a consciousness of the divine omnipresence, meaning that God is present in and through everything and everyone, and prayer is simply anything that we do that awakens our understanding to this reality. This is echoed in another book, Anthony DeMello, called Sadhana. And in that book, he begins with the premise that prayer can and should be fun, and that any act can be prayer as long as you are coming to attention, right? You also see this echoed in Teresa Avila's Interior Castle. There's a verse in the Bible that instructs people to pray without ceasing. Now, if you think about that in a literal sense, that's kind of impossible because you can't be engaged in an act of prayer as traditionally understood at every single moment of your life. You have to sleep. You have to drive a car. You can't always be, making the sign of the cross or holding your rosary beads or saying a Hail Mary.
Can't record a podcast if you're praying. Right.
Right. But the idea of praying without ceasing means that you are in a state of mindfulness.
You're noticing the world around you.
Yeah.
For me, the most sort of euphoric state is often, for me, is when I'm writing, because real writing is just noticing and then focusing that what you've noticed into the words on the page, right?
Absolutely. So we often conflate the distinction between prayer as a practice and specific forms of prayer as techniques. And there are a whole bunch of different forms of prayer throughout the history of religion, even in the Christian tradition alone. So the Hail Mary is a kind of prayer, but that's different from the Our Father. Right. And both of those belong within a specific category of prayer, right? And there are different categories of prayer and different examples of prayer. The Spiritual Exercises of St. Ignatius, for instance, is an entire book on different kinds of prayer, or the Anthony DeMello book on Sadhana. Every single chapter is a kind of prayer. There is even a kind of prayer that simply involves being attentive to the inflow and outflow of breath and recognizing that too is the circulation of the divine, right? There are all these different types of prayer. So I think just like with positivity, you have to make a distinction between positive psychology, which is this field where lots of people disagree, there's lots of diversity, there's no single monolithic conclusion, and the easy to pick on idea that says you should only think about what makes you feel good. You have to do that same thing with prayer. Prayer is this old ancient tradition that has transformed many people's lives and has been used in many different ways across cultures and religious traditions. And then there's prayer as we have been taught, which is shut your eyes really tightly, close your hands, right, and do petitionary prayer, where you treat God as Santa Claus and you list out specific things that you want and you say, God, give me these things and give me these things.
Right.
That is one form of prayer.
Yeah. Help me win,
but that's not the only kind.
Help me win the game and
help me win the game.
Give me the nice car and the bigger house.
Right.
Yeah.
Please. And and yeah, I think that's a good point. There's noticing versus as you said, petitioning. I often think that we turn to prayer in the darkest moments, not in the appreciative moments, right? Where it's like, wow, this is all going great. Must be because I'm awesome.
Right.
But this is all going terrible. Must be because God hasn't helped me out, right?
Right.
So I just need some help, God.
It's interesting you put that perspective on it, because I do pray, but I don't ask for stuff anymore. It's to show gratitude. It might be to help myself focus on what it is that I want to incorporate into my life, whether it's I don't know, man, wanting to live a healthier lifestyle. And I will voice my want, but it's not asking, I don't it's not like, hey, program me, go inside my brain and program me. It's more about hey, thanks for giving me the opportunity to change these things. But that's how I look at prayer. But I guess it's another way. It's a long way of saying, for me, prayer it used to be this, yes, give me, help me. And now it's a gratitude practice that I have. And it's the things that I do want. Yeah. I mean, if there was a Santa Claus that I could ask stuff for, I guess maybe I would ask for stuff, but really the wants that I have, I just put myself in God's shoes. And if I was God, I would want me to do it myself. I would want me to put as much effort into it, and for me to go through the struggle, for me to not just have things handed to me. So
I even notice that with parenting now. Like with Ella, it'd be much easier for me to make her bed in the morning than coaching her through it repeatedly, right? Or whatever it is. It's I could say, just give me it, I'll do it, right? But what's that going to do? It's going to just enable her to keep asking Santa Claus to do the thing for her, right? And just this weekend, she was doing something with a little tablet that she has, and she was like, come over here and help me with it. I'm like, no, you come over here and I will help you with it if I'm not doing something right now, right? I'm going to help you figure it out. I'm not going to come over there and fix everything for you.
So there's a very interesting Bible story that mirrors that. So there's a story of Jesus and the disciples on the boat. And there's a great storm, and it causes the disciples to fear for their lives. Jesus is sleeping on the boat, according to the story, and the disciples run to him, and they wake him up, and they say, Jesus, we fear for our lives. We're going to die. Save us. And Jesus' response is very interesting. Based on religious stereotypes alone, what you would expect from Jesus is for him to say something like, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have come to your God in a time of great distress, and you have made a request of me. Allow me to help you out. But that's not what he says. He rebukes them and says, O ye of little faith, how long must I tarry with thee? Then he addresses the wind and the waves, and he says, peace be still, and the storm ceases. And then they say, what manner of man is this that even the wind and the seas obey him? And whenever you hear that preached about or talked about, usually the emphasis is on how powerful Jesus was by making the storm cease. But we kind of overlook the fact that he rebuked his own followers when they reacted to a crisis by running to him and begging him to save them. He responded to them as if it were his will for them to develop their own potential to do something about it. In the Eastern Orthodox Christian tradition, one of the words that's used for salvation is theosis, which means God becoming. And it follows the pattern of one of the early church fathers who said God became man so that man might become God. And the notion there is the goal of prayer is self-actualization. It's divinization, right? That the goal of prayer is to not increase this sense of dependency that causes us to constantly make petitions.
Right.
Save me, give me, give me. It's to increase that sense of independency where we sort of reclaim our understanding of what it means to be made in the image and likeness of the Creator, where we awaken to our own creative power, our own creative potential, and we can fulfill the command that was given in Genesis, where God creates the world and says, I'm going to stop now. I'm handing the project over to you. Be fruitful and multiply. Take this world and make it more than what it was when I gave it to you.